morning, everybody. Welcome to episode number 15 of the Morning Tea. I am very, very happy to be here this morning with Lesley Johnson-Woo. Lesley is a personal friend of mine and an amazing shamanic healer here in the Edmonton area. She actually lives out near, Sherwood Park, Beaumont area. Lesley, welcome.
Thank you.
Lesley, what do you have in your cup this morning?
I have Great Life tea, my favorite.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have to make sure I don't drink it too often because I'm almost running out. So it's like a special one, right?
I know. It's in my cupboards as well. And I just pop it out for special occasions almost.
Yeah.
So Great Life tea is a blend from Gemma Stone that is just the most delicious thing you've ever put in your mouth, I think. Today I'm drinking coffee. I had no milk. I have nothing in my cupboards right now because we're actually, for the most part, living out in Canmore. So I did have coffee, but I had to put honey in it to sort of give it that sweet edge that I like. What are you grateful for today?
Oh, nature, for sure. Just being able to get outside and dig in the dirt and plant trees and the garden. Can't wait to get out there and spend the whole day out there today. So,
did you get your garden in already, or is that today's job?
Part of it, and the rest of it will be today. So fingers crossed that it stays warm.
Yeah, we had a wicked thunderstorm here this morning, but I don't know. Hopefully it's not coming your way.
I think this whole week is supposed to be a little rainy, so it'll be good for it. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Today I am grateful to be here on this call with you. I've missed you. It's been a while.
I know.
All right, so Lesley, as we launch into this, let's first hear a little bit about what brought you onto this path of healing and what you're doing currently.
Okay. So I was a social worker for 17 years. And part of that was child protection in my earlier years. And then the last few years I was in healthcare. And it was about 2014, I think, that I started to notice this change in myself. And I felt a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, but I didn't know where it was coming from. And then I sort of I knew that it was like something that I needed to figure out because it was not serving me, obviously, in my home life, my family life. So found meditation, which is now part of my daily practice every day. And I'm so grateful for that because it's really helped me kind of go inwards. And, I realized why I probably was a social worker for so many years because I was so focused on helping others outwards and with their problems that I was less sort of putting up this wall against my own. And eventually that led me to the eighth fire. And it was a really interesting way of how that happened. Through meditation, I kept getting this message: if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. And, I thought of Kevin Costner. I thought, well, maybe, maybe that's my purpose. And I typed it into Google one day, and Pete is my teacher, Algonquin medicine man. And he had a class at the time called Building Your Spiritual Business 2.0. If you build it, they will come. And I thought, well, that's interesting. This guy's in Ottawa. Will I take this class? I don't own a business. But I kept going back, and eventually he had on his page the eighth fire Earning the Light program, which was the program that I took with him for 2.5 years. And that's the program that literally changed my life because I remember sitting in there and he's talking all about trauma and, these horrific things. And I'm like, I put up my hand. I'm like, what if none of these things happened to me? My childhood was fine. And, I'm good and I have a job. And he's like, oh boy, you're going to have a tough time with this. So yeah, it was like my first wake up call to be able to begin to sort of remove the masks from myself and begin to be okay with trauma is different for everyone. And although my childhood looked different than other people's childhoods and other people's experience, what I went through and my experience still had trauma. So once I began to unpack all of that, I could literally feel myself change, that anger and resentment and everything of that, slowly just unpacking and beginning to see the world differently, beginning to see myself differently even. So
amazing. I'm really glad that you didn't just go ahead and build a baseball field in your backyard, because it would have been a very different story in the long run. I'm going to change my view here. Hang on one second. There we go. Yeah, so I mean, I've also followed Pete's pages as well, and I find I find such beautiful words come out of this man's mouth. So I can imagine it was a powerful experience to work with him and to learn his teachings. I know that in addition to the shamanic energy work that you do, you also do Reiki and other forms of sort of spiritual healing, if you will.
Yeah. And, it was interesting because, I started doing meditation and teaching. I did the 200-hour training through Lifestyle. And so I started teaching meditation because I wanted people to be able to see, like, wow, if you begin to put this little, what, people might see as a difficult practice into your life, it can change just everything about how you feel. And then I kept the same sort of thing with the shamanic work. I kept sort of getting this like Reiki. And the moment I took my Reiki courses, I was like, wow, like, what is this? Your hand, my hands, I could feel it. I was just like, wow, okay. I didn't realize that just anyone could have the ability to feel this. And so once I got deeper into the shamanic work, I found myself, practicing more with the energy healing of the shamanic work. But I knew that Reiki is such a safe starting point for people. Not everyone's going to jump into like SRT or shamanic work. It's like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. Whereas Reiki has, it's like this, people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's sort of like massage, right? People are more willing to kind of try it. And I wanted, the reason I teach it still is because I want that to be the starting point for people to be able to open up themselves to intuition, to connect with themselves, to understand just what energy feels like, manifestation. And when I have that first class, like Reiki level 1 and Reiki level 2, I love the students that come in because they're just in awe that they have the ability to tap into something inside of themselves, to be able to allow that Reiki energy to flow through them. And so that's why I still teach that, because I feel maybe these people won't ever use it in their life to do healing work, but at least in their home and be able to connect with themselves is so important for me.
Yeah. I can speak from experience that Reiki was definitely a gateway drug for me when it comes to that energetic healing practices and this whole world of spirituality and self-development and all of these things. I took my Reiki 1 about 20 years ago almost. I took my Reiki 2 about 10 years after that. And then I just recently did my Reiki 3 with Lesley, who is an amazing teacher, by the way. Plug. Go see Lesley for this. Also, she has an amazing space in which to learn in out on her acreage. But definitely it was that piece, that initial Reiki 1 practice that really set this, I don't know, like lit a fire in me going, wait, like I have this in me. Like I get to decide where my energy lies and how I apply it and where I'm resonating at on a daily basis, because it's here. It's all here, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
And I think it helps to bring, once people become aware of themselves, right? You find so many people, like, you can't make a change unless you have an awareness of what needs to be changed, right? So, if with our mind, it's the idea that, we really only know 5% of what we know with our brain, and the other 95% comes from the subconscious. So once you begin to have these practices of meditation, and if you have done Reiki and you begin to use it, and you get this awareness of like, what am I really feeling? Why am I triggered by this person? Or why is this behavior continue? It's coming from inside, not someone telling you, well, you should do this or you should do that, or reading books or watching shows. Yeah, those all help as tools, but really the compass of having that awareness of your subconscious and what your body's telling you, your intuition is telling you, is where the change is going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So when I asked you what you'd like to sort of chat about today, you had talked about talking about the powers of our thoughts and how they affect, our energy, our vibration, the way that that affects our immunity, and the way that we sort of go forth in life. I am so excited to talk to you about this. I've been having a conversation with many of my friends lately along this vein. But I'll let you sort of introduce this, and then I've got some questions for you too.
For sure. Yeah. It's the power of our thoughts is so, so important for our physical, for our emotional, for our immunity. And it's interesting. We all grew up with that whole sticks and stones will break your bones, names will never hurt me, or what other people think of me doesn't matter to me. It's like, no, it does. Like how we think about ourselves and how others think about us affects our aura. And especially during this time, of COVID, the amount of thoughts that people are having and the amount of things that are being put on us from, say, media, social media, other people's views, they're all being filtered through. And so it's up to us to decide which thoughts we to believe to be our truth and which thoughts we're saying, no, those are not our truth. Right.
Yeah.
And, I thought of some examples, and the reason I wanted to talk about thoughts is because I've had some examples in my life where I've had physical issues happen to me because of my thoughts. And I want to be clear, sometimes we're not even aware that we're thinking these things. It's our behavior, or we're just so innately having these thoughts that we're not even aware of them. Right. And it must be about a couple of years ago now. I was doing this workshop with a friend, and she kept saying to me, let's do all these lives. Let's do all these lives. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to be live. Like, I don't want people to see me. Like, I want to be able to hold the camera and practice, get it right. And she was like, no, let's go. We're going on. Right. And so we went on, and she was really encouraging me, just do it, just be yourself. And the whole time I remember just being on that live call, and I was thinking about, look at your eyes. They're so puffy. Look at your cheeks. They look like this. Look at your hair. And it was like, as I'm doing the live call, I'm not even like really there because I'm focused on like who's in the picture. Right. And it was probably about, maybe 4 days later, I started to get this itchy sensation on my forehead. And it turned into this burning sensation. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. I must have touched myself, with a chemical. And pretty soon it blistered. And I was like Googling, like, okay, herpes on the head, cold sores on the head.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is it manifested as shingles right here, big on my forehead. And it was sort of growing. And so right away, I totally am on board with Western medicine, but I knew, I was like, this showed up for a reason, right? I get it. It's shingles, but it showed up for a reason.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with one of my coworkers who also practices this work. And I said to him, like, okay, this is what is shown up on my face. And so he did a session for me, and I didn't tell him anything. I just said, this is what has shown up. And he came back and he said, okay, well, what came up is the amount of negative thoughts you're telling yourself about how you're your face is not pretty enough. You're not, your eyes are this, your cheeks are that. And I was blown away because it was like, he nailed it. I was having so much negative thoughts about my physical appearance that, the subconscious was like, oh, okay, well, you want to speak like that to yourself. We'll give you something to be shown, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, people were like, oh, are you okay? What happened to your head? Oh, what's on your face? Do you have something? I was wearing a Band-Aid and I was like, wow, thanks universe. Thank you so much. Right.
Yeah.
And, the moment I began to sort of realize, I was like, okay, you can't do this anymore to yourself. Like, you are beautiful inside, outside. It has nothing to do with the shell. And I began to do some work on that. It was interesting because the doctor, the Western medicine doctor that I went to, he says to me, like, after 10 days, it was gone. He's like, well, this is unusual. He's like, people usually go through like months and months with having the symptoms or the scarring, and mine in 10 days, it was gone. It was like, but it couldn't exist in my body anymore because I wasn't going to allow it to take over. Right. So that is how powerful your thought process can be to manifest these physical things in our bodies.
And I think that for many people, it's so hard to shift the awareness of the illness, of the disease, of whatever that is, when they're in it. So when they're in it, they become so focused on it that it really provides this breeding ground for that virus or whatever to multiply, to grow, to become more symptomatic. But if you recognize it for what it is and address it in that way, it's just, that's a beautiful testament to how powerful we are over our own physical beings, Yeah.
And the root cause of it is like, once I got to the root cause of it, it couldn't be there. Yeah. And I didn't, it's like, I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell my grandma, I'm talking to all these people every day in my life who they don't really see me, but I didn't tell them about it, because for me, the less people thinking about it or putting thought into it, it's easier for me to control, right? Yeah. So if I'm telling them about it and then all of a sudden they're every day, oh, did you know Lesley has shingles? Oh, did you know Lesley? And they're spreading, they're just having it in regular conversation. It's giving the power to the thing. And I'm like, no, they don't know. This is something that so later on I told them, like, oh, you wouldn't believe what I did to myself. And I think that's the part where people sometimes have difficulty, is that it's not so much like doing to yourself with awareness, right? And so you don't have to be ashamed or guilty or beat yourself up for that. It's that when you're able to recognize that, okay, something has led us to sort of bring this into our life or allow it to show up in our life, stepping into that power to know that you've brought it in, but you can do something about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. I have to dig through some of my recordings. I went on a Abraham Hicks cruise with my girlfriend Krista, who a few years ago, and she actually went on stage and asked about this very same thing, because she had many years ago had shingles, and then she later had just a thought about it. Oh, I haven't had that for a while, and it's something that often can be recurring. And like that week, it showed up. And so she was asking Abraham, what is this about? Like, I wasn't having negative thoughts about it. I wasn't having any, didn't feel like a manifestation. And what Abraham said is that, so often these are like just belief patterns and not necessarily conscious thoughts that we're like currently repeating in our minds, but these bigger belief patterns. And then also she said that often, we might say something like this, about, oh, I haven't had shingles in a long time. And then immediately in our head, we start trying to suck that back. Oh, oh, wait, I don't want to manifest this. So, oh, take it back. I take it back. But then that generates that energy in that direction, right? Anyway, it was fascinating. If I find it, I'll send it your way. Yeah. Wow. I wanted to ask you, so this is the piece that I really...
And if you begin to sort of pay attention.
Go ahead.
It's like, sometimes if you begin to sort of pay attention to when these themes are coming up in your life, like my dad, he has a cold sore that reoccurs in his eyeball. So it's like right on his eyeball. And we began to sort of track, and it was always September and maybe around April. Those were the 2 months where they would always sort of show up. And it took us some time to sort of begin to track that. And then with that tracking, then we're able to go, okay, was there a particular event that occurred at some point in your life around those time frames?
Right.
And then heal it there, because it's showing up for a reason in the eye, at those particular times. Right. And then once you track that and heal the back part of it, it stops showing up in the months to come. So
right. That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
So the bit that I wanted to ask you about in regards to this is that, and this is the conversation I've been having with people recently, is in regards to, the power of our thoughts and the way that our thoughts sort of attract into our life. And then the shamanic work. So, again, I love Abraham Hicks. I listen to a lot of her recordings, and she often says that, looking back at things will reactivate those emotions, and that's sending the energy in the wrong direction. We should be looking towards, things that make us feel good, that are positive, that are, that the work is to get into alignment. And I see the value in that, because I recognize that when I'm in alignment, when I look back on these things that may have been traumatizing or damaging or hurtful, I'm able to see them from an aligned place, and I don't see them anymore as wrongdoings or offenses to me. I can see them in a way that makes me recognize that these were learning experiences, these were opportunities for growth, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in shamanic work, it is my understanding that it is you dig around in these past traumas, and you go back and you heal these traumas. And I'm just wondering, what is your perspective on the, looking only to align and going into the trauma to heal it? Is it a versus thing, or is it all one and the same?
There's sort of, I can see two parts of what you're saying with that too, right? It's like there's parts of myself in this shamanic work that I've been healing that I didn't even know were trauma, right? Yeah. So it's not so much about the story or the experience and going into it and digging around.
Yeah.
It's going to the part where your subconscious, your cellular memory, your everything viewed that to be trauma, and it became the belief system. So not so much, it's like, for example, if we're doing karmic work and we're doing past life, it's not so much about the story of the past life.
Right.
It's that we want to go to the place where what was unresolved and why is it still showing up in your body? The moment you heal that, then over here, you begin to sort of look at oh, okay, I was living my life from this sort of lens or this sort of perspective because of this, right? So things like, we usually work with the four affinities, right? So self-worth, betrayal, rejection, and having a self-worth, betrayal, rejection, and abandonment. So, many of us are aware that okay, we've had those things in our life, right?
Yeah.
But we've had them at different points in our life. We don't have to go back to every single time we felt betrayed or we felt rejected and oh, remember that one time this boy, remember this one time? No, it's the idea that we encompass it all
Yeah.
Sort of bring it down into this timeline of abandonment all the times that you've expressed it in your life, and
Right.
allow the subconscious to release it that way.
Yeah.
So you're still then being able to see the experience from a point of view of like, okay, I learned from that,
Yeah.
right? And for some people, they have difficulty with that because they're like, but it happened, this event happened and it was hurtful. It's like, well, of course it did. And the other person's behavior is not condoned, but you don't want to allow that event or that individual to still allow you to be feeling that or still in that same place.
Right.
You want to be able to come out and look at it and go, okay, that's what took place, and this is where I came out from it, and what I learned from it, right?
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like the notion of, holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal in your own hands, right?
Yeah. And forgiveness, right? It's one of the biggest sort of things, right? Because we're spending all this time holding in all of this anger, in our body.
Mm-hmm.
A majority of the time, the other person in the experience has already moved on. They're like, "Yep, see you later," and we're just sitting here harboring all of these sorts of things inside of our body. And really, when you take a look at it, it's like the situation is still having power over you. So the moment you realize, okay, I can't do anything about that other person's reaction to this, but I can do with this what I need, right? And sending compassion to myself and to the other person and working through that is for yourself. It's not for them, it's for yourself. And you're not coming off in a bad way towards them. You're saying, I send you compassion so that eventually one day maybe the two can be forgiven together. But focusing on our own self is the most important.
And so powerful and so empowering to recognize that is not necessarily, well, yes, this was a harm that was done, but to view it in a way that you can let that, like, just release that from yourself. And I love what you said about sending compassion to that person in recognizing that, they were approaching it from where they're at. And we have no control over where another person is at and their actions and what they choose to call their reality and perceptions, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
I say to one of my friends, I'm like, doing this work is like such a gift, but on the other hand, it is such a like, oh, then I have to do something about it. Because, previously I would just be like, oh, well, this person, this, and this person, that. And now I'm like, no, like you have to take accountability for yourself in that experience, right? Being the victim all the time and everything, it doesn't happen, right? There's always that point where you were part of it. Now, when you take accountability of that and do the work on that, it's going to change the dynamic of the whole situation.
Yes.
So yeah, that's difficult sometimes to be able to do that. Or, when I look at sort of, if I have a situation with my mom, for example, and I see the way, I can see her behavior. And now I can step back. Before I used to be like, well, that's just anger. And now I can step back and go sort of see where her anger is coming from. It's different than the behavior, because I know that it's coming from a place of protection or deflection. And so, I can't change that. I can send compassion and hope that, she or any other individual comes to a place to recognize that the anger is just an armor or just something that's showing on the outside. And I hope, and in my mind, sometimes when someone's like that, I just say, I hope that one day you're able to, come to a point where you can, sort of unpack these layers too. I send blessings. Often I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I send blessings because I don't want it to be I don't think, oh, you have to change this, and this, because that's me putting my thoughts on them. I just send blessings because it's up to them. It's like, what do you want out of life, right? And hope that those blessings turn out for them to be, that they can find this peace within themselves that that I feel like I have found, and many people that I've met have found within themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For those, at home who don't have a lot of experience with shamanic work or, really know what that looks like, do you want to give an idea of what a session can consist of, for somebody if they were interested in pursuing that work with you?
Sure. So my medicine rights come from Pete, Algonquin medicine man. So his lineage is Algonquin medicine. So it is passed down from him, from his Bernard family lineage to us. And so I can't teach it, or, it's just, he's passed these medicine rights on to us to be able to work on ourselves and others.
Yeah.
We generally work with animal medicine through different journeys, energy work, magnetic work, different ceremonies. And what that looks like is if someone books a session, then before, when people could come to my healing space, they would come. We would sit down for maybe 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, because the reason we don't talk a long time is because we don't want people to think that they know what they're going to work on, because people don't. They come in with an idea of what they think they're going to work on, but they only know the pattern and the story from that 5% of their conscious mind, right? So when I keep that talk at the beginning short, it's because I want to help to track them to a place to what's really showing up. And how I can usually know that is because emotion will usually show up for them. They'll usually begin to cry, or they'll usually begin to get upset. And that's where I know, okay, this is the point we need to begin to work on. Then I'll usually have them lay down on my massage table. And this type of work, similar to Reiki, can be hands-on or hands-off. So sometimes if we're doing energy work, I might be touching or having my hands above. Other times I might just be sitting on a chair next to them, leading them through a particular journey to maybe the lower world or the middle world or the upper world. These are the types of ceremonies that we work with to be able to access information in their body that they're not aware of, but we can become aware of it through trance and going to these particular ceremonies. So working on things like the gathering, so pieces of ourselves that are, we feel like are missing from ourselves, soul's reflection, which is a lot to do with our, what do we want to embody in ourselves, animal totems, Akashic records. It's endless, the amount of ceremonies that he has gifted us with to be able to heal, and energy work, magnetic work, gravity work. And for me, like, I love it because every day I'm still learning and growing, because I'm like, wow, like this happened, this shifted, it's, I think that's why I feel intrigued every day when I work with it too. And then distance work. I mean, it's still what I'm doing now, because energy is just energy. It doesn't matter if you're there and I'm here. I can create an avatar here as if Annie's laying right on my table, and do the work, and you can be lying down in your bed at home and feeling the exact same. Your experience is different, right. But what I'm doing, you're experiencing in your own way. So, right. And that's tough for people to understand sometimes, right? Because they're just like, what? How can I be here and you're there and you be working on me?
Yeah. But energy is energy, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like our thoughts, right? If I have a thought, I mean, some of you might have even experienced this before, right? It's like you're at home and you have a thought, and then all of a sudden your phone dings and someone's like, oh, I was just thinking about you and I wanted to check in, right? Well, that's sometimes not a coincidence, right? It's the idea that your thought process is taking place, which is then energetically shifting the other person. Yes. And they all of a sudden have this idea to give you a message or send you a text, right?
100%. 100%. So Lesley, we are kind of getting to the end of our time together. I want to give, I want to ask you what have you got offered right now during COVID? You said that you are doing home or at home work, like distance sessions.
Yes. Yeah. I'm still doing distant sessions until it's okay for people to be able to come back into my space. And then I've been doing once a week online. I've been doing a free group healing. So the dates have kind of changed. I'm hoping to get it on the same date at the same time every week, so it's easier for people to navigate. Because on the acreage, the internet connection is not that great, I usually do make sure that I don't go on Zoom or anything. I just have people sign up, intend that they're going to be part of that, and then I work distantly on the group. So people can find that on my Soul Tree Connection Instagram or Facebook page. I always post it a few days in advance for that free offering. And then hopefully once we're able to have a few more gathering, now that we're allowed to have a few more people even on outdoors, I always usually have my healing circles once a month, where, a group of us will come together, people sign up, and then we usually do a talk and then a healing. And so now that it's getting nicer outside, hopefully being able to possibly in June start doing those again. And obviously we can do that just safely, with
Right.
spreading out in the yard too.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, beautiful. That would be amazing. Okay, so I will post the links to Lesley's Facebook page, Instagram page, and website as well. Anything else that you want to share before we?
I think it's important. I want to give you just some tips of what you can do,
Yes,
right?
please.
Is that when people are putting these thoughts on you, and you're like, do I want to take this as mine? There's some simple little things that you can do. And I'll give you an example. My mom called me and she said, oh, your grandma was just diagnosed with this, blood disorder, and it's hereditary. All us women need to be checked. And immediately when she said it, I just said 0. And for me, 0 is, that's not truth, right?
Right.
Her belief system is that it's hereditary and we're all going to get it. But that's not my belief system.
Right.
I believe it showed up in grandma's body for a reason. So some of the things that you can do is that when you feel you're in those situations, or you yourself are aware that you're having that thought of, oh, I can't climb this hill because my knees are bad. It's like, stop. 0 is something that you can say, because it sort of brings it to this negative. It's like, it's not truth, right? It's like bringing it back down to it's gone. Or just even asking yourself, is this my truth, right? So when someone's talking to you and putting these thoughts on you, and you can in your mind just say, is this my truth? And listen to your body, because especially for immunity during these times, our thoughts is what controls our aura. So when our aura begins to sort of shrink and get closer to our body because of our thoughts and other people's thoughts, that's the times when our immunity is going to get low, because the tears in our aura, all the dis-ease and disharmony can come through. So it's so important for us to get that aura out big, strong, and so that we're protecting ourselves, not from the sense of fear, but knowing that we're just in harmony and in flow. So making sure that when you are aware that you are having those thoughts, that you do, some deep breathing, 0 out those thoughts. And even a practice of, like, in the morning when you get up, just closing your eyes and imagining that there's this sort of imaginary vessel, which is your aura, just extending it out past your house, past your room, all the way out. And then if you sort of feel it kind of coming in, again, pushing it out, right, to protect yourself, right? Not from a sense of fear. I don't want to come across as that, like, oh, put your bubble on when you go out. Yeah. But just making sure that your aura is at its strongest, so that you're able to fight off, any sort of viruses or disharmonies or dis-ease that might be, able to come through.
I have to say that this conversation was a perfect example of what Lesley is talking about. with the energetic thoughts, being able to sort of influence others when you mentioned the phone call, because literally 2 days ago, I was having this thought, my knees are not going to be able to handle this hiking every day. So I love that you just used that as an example. It was perfect.
And you think about, like, if you think about your body, right? How many times did you tell a body part that it's not good enough? And like, how do you expect it to work at its optimal if you're like, oh, my knees are bad, or, you know, my hip is all hurt, you know, it's like, well, of course your hip and your knee is like, oh, well, thanks a lot. I guess I'm not good enough, so I can't perform, right? So if you shift that and say, you know, every day my knees are getting stronger to be able to do this, right?
Yes.
Every day I'm building strength, you know, and sort of change the thought process and the wording of it. You would be surprised. I mean, when I tested it when I went to Peru, these mountains were like this, and the altitude was, and I stood at the bottom and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? And I would, you know, I'd get climbing up and I'd be halfway up and I'd get into that thought process of like, I can't go any further. And I would just say, I'd close my eyes and I just say 0, because it's not true. It's like this inner strength that just all of a sudden you'd feel this Superman strength of like, well, of course I can. And you get to the top and you just feel so proud that you didn't allow your thought process to defeat you, right? Because it's not your physical body. Your physical body has taken you so many places and does so many things for you. It's this that you have to be able to get control of to allow the physical body to be at its peak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, beautiful. Ah, chills. It's perfect. So, okay. Is there anything else? That was beautiful. If you've got more of those juicy bits, I'm willing to stick it out.
No, it's just, I think sometimes it just, we've focused so long on the physical, right? But once we begin to sort of shift that idea that the thoughts behave, you know, it controls the physical, you begin to see these shifts and changes within yourself. You know, and I tell people, it's like you can stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself, you know, you're beautiful all day long and use affirmations. But until your body and your subconscious actually even knows what that feels like, it's difficult to believe, right? So when you can be able to go into the subconscious and actually, okay, what does beauty feel like to me? The next time you say it in the mirror, your body responds a different way. It's not just standing there saying, I'm so beautiful, I am beautiful, I am enough. Like, you know, those are words and affirmations help. But what is enough if you've never felt enough, right? So being able to sit with the word enough and beauty and feel it in your body, so that when you do say it, it's like it ignites something. It's like, oh, this is beauty. Like being grateful. I mean, how many times have people said, oh, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. But the moment you feel gratitude in your body and you literally begin to vibrate and you're like, oh, this is what gratitude feels like. Okay, now I know, right? And it takes time to be able to feel it and see it, right? So, or say it, I mean. And when the two of them come together, it's amazing. So, 100%.
All right. Well, Lesley, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. This just filled me right up. I'm going to go forth and have the most incredible day. Thank you for being here. Anybody who would like to learn more about Lesley and learn more about her offerings, I will post the information here. In fact, you can probably see it already just down here. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Thank you.